Hi, this is Mark. Congratulations. You have found this amazingly awesome show. Chances are you're listening to it right now on whether it's iTunes or Stitcher Radio or some other mobile app that allows you to stream this amazingly awesome show to your ear holes. And I can't stress how awesomely amazing this show really is. But did you know that you can also catch the latest episode of this show on the Tangibound Network? That's right. Go check out tangiboundnetwork.com. You can look them up and you can listen to it right there. It's even mobile friendly. What more could you ask for? Which means you can pull it up on your iPhone or your Android, even your Windows phone. Yeah, who has one of those? But still, point remains, you can do it. You can do it. Check it out, tangiboundnetwork.com. Listen to this show, the latest episode, every time. Check it out.
Life sucks to the last drop. Are you gonna blow your head off? Take good aim and don't forget to duck. Life sucks every Monday and all the way to Sunday, but I wouldn't have it any other way. I don't care how you're doing, what's up or how's it hanging. I'd like to buy this world one last drink. And life sucks all of the time. Stick it up your sunshine, and then you'll see the clouds every day. And then you'll see the clouds every day. And then you'll see the clouds every day.
Welcome to The Crazy Life, everyone. This is going to be a second part of a first part. That's usually how it goes, from what I understand. This is a part 2. We started talking last week about talking to children about anxiety and anxiety issues and stuff. So if you are joining us for this episode, there might be some stuff that we refer back to the last episode on. So I just wanted to let you guys know that up front. If you want to, if you haven't listened to the first one, you might want to listen to the first one, and this one will make more sense. If not, I'm sure you'll still get a lot of stuff out of this episode as well. Some of it just might be a little bit like, huh? So anyways, as I blabber on, I'm Jen. For those new and joining us, I am the hostess for the evening. And with me, as always, is Brian and Hanno. Hey, guys.
Hello.
Hey, hey, hey.
Hey. So I have had a very weird week. Everyone, I'm a day person normally. I work during the day, like a traditional employee, but this last week I went to the midnight shift. I was covering for someone, so I worked midnight to 6 a.m. I normally work 6 a.m. to 3 p.m., so complete switch in my schedule. So if I'm a little space cadet-y or a little disjointed today, I apologize. I'm still trying to switch my sleep schedule back because I have to be there 6 a.m. tomorrow. So lots and lots and lots of fun. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. That's why I'm kind of blabbering on. So I'm going to toss the mic over to one of my guys. Who wants to go first? How's your week been?
We need to have like a coin flip every single time. Ready? Here we go.
I'll go, I guess. It's been a really weird week for me because I've had some kind of interesting ups and downs to it. It was the anniversary of the day my dad died, so that was obviously a low point, but it isn't that it's any easier. It's still a punch in the stomach every year, but it's one of those things where it's coming. I know I'm gonna be down, so I kind of prepare for it pretty well, It's just, I just know that I'm just not going to feel like a lot of interaction or whatever. And that's what I did. I just pretty much, just kept to myself and just kind of, just didn't really put myself out there on even like social media and stuff like I do sometimes. I just kind of pulled it back that day. But it was so weird because across the last couple weeks, I have had in, the different people I talk to online and stuff, I've had so many people kind of just reach out to me and tell me, like, show their gratitude to me for being their friend.
Awesome.
Or whatever. And it's, it really is. It's one of the most awesome things that you can kind of receive from someone is when you just know, like, just out of nowhere. It's not even you're in a conversation. They just kind of are like, oh, hey, by the way, and it's just like, oh, wow, thanks. It's so, and the timing on a few of them were perfect, and, cause it kind of offset that low point by adding some, just add some, power level to your self-esteem a little bit, and,
Yeah.
And then I've been in, a friend of mine, in one of the groups, his podcasts have had a contest, to where they have 64 people in it, and it's on Twitter, and basically they give a topic, and then it works bracket style until there's, each round there's a different topic, and you have basically 2 days to write a joke, and, or a tweet, and, I ended up winning the tournament. So
Doing the whole thing.
yeah, the whole thing.
Okay, I didn't know it was like a bracket style. That's awesome.
Yeah, so that was pretty cool, and because all the way through it, I was, kind of like, I don't know, I really didn't have a lot of confidence going through it because I saw what other people were posting. And I was like, man, this is, there was some really funny stuff, and to keep making it was really cool. And then at the end, and then after I won it, just so many people in different groups and stuff kind of reached out to me and like, hey, I saw you won this. That's awesome. And just, it was kind of a cool thing to do. And then, I also, I got my decision letter on my disability, which I'm not going to go into this too much here, but I got declined for it. And then, we'll see what the next steps are. But so that was kind of a punch in the beans, it was, that's
Sure.
why I said it was kind of an up and down week multiple times for me. So it was, and right now, honestly, I'm feeling more of the downs than I am the up, at this point. It kind of feel, because I think it was with the hearing, I was kind of in a holding pattern until I knew what was going to happen. And now that that's happened, it's kind of, things are uncertain going forward. I don't have plans. I don't have, so it's kind of a scary place to be, and a little bit, it's kind of depressing, and, but we'll see. I'm not like, totally giving up or anything like that, but it's been kind of rough the last, few days for me, about the second half of the week especially, but, that's all right though. I mean, it is what it is. I can't full on control anything with it, so I can't, I'm not giving too much to it at this point. So, yeah, I think that's about it for me though.
About time for, it's one of those that you kind of have to almost do the serenity prayer or a version thereof. It's understanding, having the understanding of what you can control and what you can't.
Yeah.
And letting the stuff you can't control go. And it's very, very difficult. And, it's a constant battle, I think, that we all face. It's letting go of the stuff that we can't effectively control at this moment, and moving past it. But definitely, it's awesome that you had that positivity at a time that you really needed it.
Yeah.
That people felt that, or whatever motivated them at that moment to reach out to you. It was just the perfect alignment of time and space and what you needed.
Mm-hmm.
So that's beyond awesome. So, how about you, Henno? How was your week?
First, I'll say it's sorry to hear that. That's just disappointing.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
There's just
Yeah.
no other word for it.
Right.
It's just disappointing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and it's so hard to sit there and, like you said, say, all right, well, now I'll do the next indicated thing.
Yeah.
Well, what is that?
Yeah.
You know,
Exactly. Yep.
get up and eat breakfast tomorrow. I mean,
Yeah,
that's basically it.
Literally
It's
what
like,
it is. Yeah. It's yep.
Mhm.
Well, and it also doesn't
Wow.
help the not going to therapy right now. This is a
Oh,
time where I
yeah.
could really
Yeah.
use therapy, and
Absolutely.
I can't go get it because of how insurance, is. So,
Mhm.
That's the part where there you could say pretty much the exact same things to somebody that you know, but it's just different
yeah,
when you go talk to your therapist.
yeah,
It is just different. I can't tell you why, but it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like talking to a coach, like if you're an
Yeah.
athlete, your coach just for some reason there's a different weight to their words and
Yeah.
whatnot. Even if all they do is go, hey, look, you trained for this. Trust your training, trust your muscle memory. It's basically the same ideal. It's, hey, look, we talked about this. You've gotten tools to deal with this. Use the
Yep.
tools, trust the tools.
Yeah, it really is different. And even how like for me with the people that I use as coaches, the way I express myself is different
Mm-hmm.
because I know who I'm talking to and I know what perspective. We're the perspective that we're talking from is different than if it were one of my friends.
Yeah. Exactly.
Because there's just something that's just different about it. No, that's
Yeah.
Mhm.
bummer. Well, I also had a great. I tuned into the 7 Days a Geek. They did their Pottoberfest thing on Saturday, and I recorded a theme song for them. And they did 12 hours on Friday and 12 hours on Saturday, and all day Friday I was in that class, so I couldn't
Oh, right. Yeah.
I couldn't listen to it. I popped in at lunchtime, but I'd missed the song, and I listened to a little bit at lunchtime. But so finally Saturday, I was able to tune in, and the song starts, and like everybody is singing along and just banging on the table along with it, and they're just singing along with it, and it was just like, if that's it, if that's all I get in music, I'm good.
yeah.
I mean, seriously, it was like I wrote something and everybody, I mean, like literally at the top of their lungs, because they had a whole bunch of people there. So it was like this group chorus going on.
Yeah,
and
nice.
It was just,
That's awesome.
yeah, it really was. I was really stressed about it because they had a really great theme song beforehand. I mean, it's like their brand.
Yeah.
So I really wanted to, I hope I came up with something that was good.
Yeah.
And-
Mick
and
did
it
a
seems like
great
it
job
did.
on the previous one. Yeah.
Yeah, they had a solid one. So it was a big, and then as they went on, they did 1 hour, and my co-host from Gotham Lights was on it, and the topic came up that she's never met me before. And the guys just had some great things to say about me and nobody said that stuff about me when I was drinking.
Yeah. Right.
Nobody.
Sure.
Most people didn't say anything about me that I could hear. Most people talked behind my back and amongst themselves.
Right. Yeah.
And it was generally not positive. It was generally about the damage I'd done or the wreckage I'd created or what was happening and that kind of stuff. And it just reminded me that this whole journey is so worth it.
Yeah.
It's worth it. I went and had dinner with some friends of the family last week, and the topic of me not drinking came up, and Frank's Italian, used to own a restaurant. I mean, food and beverage, it's all tied together. It's life, it's love. And, and he's like, God, I feel sorry for you. And it's like, don't. You know,
Yeah,
and he
right.
didn't mean it like to me personally. He just meant in general. He's like, I feel sorry for people that can't. I mean, well, how is this possible? And it's like, well, it's I kind of explained it. It's like it's a trade-off that's completely worth it because I've learned to have a different life completely, and now I have people say nice things about me from somewhere else in the United States, and that's crazy. To me, that's awesome.
Right. I totally agree. Yeah. It's the same as I went through, just people I've never met. I've just, when I've seen that they've had something go on in their life and I reach out to make sure they're doing okay, or just, they're just telling me they appreciate the fact that I make them laugh on a regular basis or whatever it is. It's so awesome to do that, to hear that about yourself. It's just like, okay, I'm doing things right. Like I'm on the right path with these things, so.
Absolutely.
Actually, you just reminded me of something, Brian, that I was with my men's group on Thursday night and we had a reading and it talked about, when we get into these bad places, when we get into, where we've become very self-centered or self-serving or, whatever you want to call it, that one of the things we do besides all of our tools that we have is we turn our focus to someone else and we help somebody else. And it was a great reminder for me that anytime that I get into a bad place or a place where I'm not sure where I'm at or I'm feeling down or I'm beating myself up, there is no better cure for that than turning to somebody else and saying, hey, how can I help you today?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I always thought one of the greatest feelings must be when someone echoes back to you something you created. So if, for instance, if you write a song and you have a bunch of people sing that song back to you, and that's got to be like so overwhelming, like at concerts and stuff like that. Like when you listen to the live concerts, you hear the artist actually say, wow, many times throughout, because it's just got to be so overwhelming to have that, your baby basically being echoed back at you by so many people. It's just got to be mind blowing.
Yeah. It's not, I mean, you go, oh, they hear that every night. It's an act. No, it's not an act.
Yeah.
It is overwhelming. I don't care. You don't get used to that. You cannot get used to that.
Well, yeah. I mean, how do you get used to 10 or 20,000 people if you're doing it on the bigger scales, especially. But even if it's 50 people yelling it back or 100, it's still mind blowing that many people like what you're doing enough that they've committed it to memory and want to reciprocate. They've bought their ticket. They fight to get to the front of the stage. They want to yell it and scream it back at you while you're, singing it out to them. It's mind blowing. It's such an amazing thing,
And the other part of it is, and it doesn't even have to be music. Music is one of the more obvious ones, but, for writers, having someone, memorize passages that you've written or poetry you've written or jokes that you have written, and parrot them back at you and stuff, or things that you've said that have meant a lot to them and they send that vibe back at you. There is for me personally, when someone says, what's the meaning of life? That's the meaning of life, is servicing others in a way that they feel that they want to service you back. It's that reciprocation back and forth. Someone once said, and I don't know who, and I think I've said it on the show before, is the true meaning or the true picture of heaven and hell is the exact same. Has a bunch of people sitting at a dinner table with big piles of food in the middle of the table, and everyone has a giant fork. The difference is the people in hell are trying to feed themselves, and the forks won't fit in their mouths. They're too big. In heaven, they found that the forks are big, but they can feed each other. So the people in hell starve, but the people in heaven flourish. And I think that's such a great symbolic meaning to it, you know, that whether you believe in heaven or hell or not, I mean, the good, bad, whatever your belief system is, I think it can be applicable. And just that meaning of, if we're just fighting and fighting and fighting with ourselves to feed ourselves and to make ourselves better, but, you know, not quite getting where we need to get. Sometimes you're right, Hanno, and that's perfectly right where we were saying is sometimes you got to look outside yourself and say, you know what? I'm going to give myself a rest for a minute. Let me help someone else.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe I can't figure out how to help myself, but by helping them, it somehow works itself out.
Yeah, you know, speaking of helping others out, I thought this was a really cool thing. It's kind of a gratitude thing in a way also. I was listening to Tim Ferriss's most recent podcast, and he did this once before, and he calls it drunk dialing. And it's basically he'll be, you know, at night, he's had some gin, and he basically puts a thing out, I think on Twitter or something like that says, hey, basically, you know, DM me, you know, your phone number or whatever. And he calls people and he talks to them and allows them to basically ask him whatever they'd like to ask him. And,
cool.
You know, and he's talked to tons of people who are the most successful people in the world that have made hundreds of millions of dollars and done all sorts of good in the world, as well as, you know, some that have not done great, you know, that have been very controversial and whatnot. But it was a really cool episode to listen to, where he calls and people are just like, you know, hey, thanks for everything you do. And he goes, no, you know, he's like, hey, I appreciate it. And he's like, how can, you know, what can I do for you? You know, basically, and allowed them to just ask him, you know, and even the last one where you can tell by the way he sounds that he's kind of done for the night, you know, and the one guy goes, well, I was wondering if I could get like 15 more minutes of your time or something. And Tim's like, well, I don't know about 15 minutes, but, you know, let's just see where the conversation goes or whatever. And he gave him probably almost 15 more minutes.
Wow.
And what a lot of people will miss is that a guy like him, you know, if you were to sit to pay for an hour of his time, it's probably very valuable, you know, like incredible. Yeah. There's a lot of people that would give a lot of money to sit down with him for an hour, you know? So I thought it was cool that on a lot of these phone calls, he gave him like 10, 15 minutes and it didn't sound rushed. He didn't seem like he was like, okay, I gotta, you know, it wasn't anything like that. It was, okay, we've hit the peak of the conversation. Well, I got to keep moving. So, you know, and it was really, I appreciated it because he showed gratitude to fans of his. And he was also trying to expand, because the reason he does the podcast and the stuff he does is obviously he's doing it to make money, but he also does it because he wants to better himself. And he knows there's a bunch of other people that want to better themselves, you know, so he's kind of just trying to keep pushing that agenda forward. And it's, you know, but it was a cool listen, you know. So,
sounds like it. Yeah. Very neat.
Yep.
Cool. So, Mr. Hanno, everything else go good for during the week, or anything else you want to talk about?
It's life's good.
Life's good?
Yeah, it really is. It really is. It's been, you know, it's no different than the week before, but the attitude is all that matters, and it's good.
Yeah, it is. It really is.
Yep.
It's amazing how you really can have the same things almost happen to you week 1 and week 2, but your attitude changes somewhere in there, and one week is great and the other one is terrible, you know? You're like, well, what happened to make it terrible? You know, it's just, you can't give a reason, you know?
Yeah. Just wasn't it.
Yeah. Like, all right.
Just wasn't it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's awesome. Well, I guess we can get going into our topic.
Oh, real quick, before you get into that, let me do kind of a follow-up on last week. Which was, Hanno actually had posed the question about, like, at what age with kids do they where do kids start kind of processing anxiety separately from just being scary, essentially? And I reached out to a friend of ours who I didn't ask permission to use their name, so I'm not going to, but if you're listening, thank you. And he said that it honestly has to do with developmental age and education. I'd say not before 8, and realistically to be able to verbalize and understand themselves somewhere in teenage, maybe junior high, if they are taught about self-awareness. So, which makes sense, and that's quite a range up from, smaller kids, because again, to them, it's just going to be scary. And that makes sense. That's, I think that's where I kind of started noticing actual anxiety instead of it just being what I would call fear, Yeah,
it does. Now, what's their background? I know you don't want to give their name, but your friend you were asked a question to.
I believe they're a psychologist, but I don't know that for 100% fact. So,
gotcha.
Yeah. But I'm pretty sure
Gotcha.
they're definitely in counselor. Yeah.
So that's awesome, and thank you very much for putting that out to them, and they're responding. So if they're listening, definitely thank you very much for letting us know that. Because as we mentioned last week, none of us have children, and none of us spend significant time with children on a regular basis. So we're not the most well-versed in the whole kid thing, but when I was going through and talking to different people, a topic just kept coming up, and I found a really great article on it. So we started it last week, like I mentioned. It's what to do and not do when children are anxious. How to respect feelings without empowering fears. So I'm going to read the beginning just to kind of refresh everyone. When children are chronically anxious, even the most well-meaning parents can fall into a negative cycle, and not wanting a child to suffer actually exacerbate the youngster's anxiety. It happens when parents, anticipating a child's fears, try to protect her or him from them. Here are pointers for helping children escape the cycle of anxiety. Last week we spoke about the goal isn't to eliminate anxiety, but to help the child manage it.
And in fairness, that is the goal as an adult also.
Absolutely.
Like my therapist has, my therapist has straight out said that to me. She's like, we're not going to eliminate your anxiety or your fear or your depression. We have to find a way to help you cope with it so that you can continue, a normal life, I guess,
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So that was a really good conversation. Now, today's conversation, I want to start with don't avoid things just because they make a child anxious. Helping children avoid things that they're afraid of will make them feel better in the short term, but it reinforces the anxiety over the long run. If a child in an uncomfortable situation gets upset, starts to cry, not to be manipulative, but just because that's how they feel, and their parents whisk her out of there or remove the things she is afraid of, she's learned a coping mechanism and the cycle that has potential to repeat itself. So I think, honestly, as an adult, I struggle with this myself.
Mm-hmm.
How far do I push myself?
Yeah.
With my anxiety and stuff, when I'm having an anxiety attack, it's how far do I push myself? Because obviously I want to challenge myself so I can get better and challenge myself when it comes to fears. But where is that line? And when it's yourself kind of pushing, you can feel it. So you when you need to back off. But when you're trying to push someone else past their comfort zone, it's tough. It's tricky.
I think the key is it's really tricky because when you're pushing someone else, you basically you almost have to accept what they're saying as fact.
Yes.
You because if you don't, you could be causing harm. If you tell someone, well, you need to try this because whatever, and they're like, and then you're like, come on, and if they get into it and then they're like, nope, it's okay, well, maybe next time. It's really a frustrating step, I'm sure, for parents, but even as adults with other adults, it's frustrating to get people to do something that they have a fear of, or causes them great anxiety,
Yes.
and you don't want to push too hard because you don't want to put them in a position like, if someone told you that a crowd bothered them and you're like, oh, this isn't that bad. And they get there and they're like, I can't handle this. And you just kept pushing and pushing. They go in, they have a panic attack or something, then you're like, oh geez, what did I just do? But you don't know your limitations until I actually, this was on Tim Ferriss's podcast last night. He was talking to someone about this, about how you don't know your limitations until you push yourself near your failing point, essentially, and you kind of have to do that, or you won't, like you said before, you won't grow, you won't understand what you actually can do, because you get caught up in the fear or the anxiety. And I think that's why my therapist, I've talked on here before about how my therapist was, well, when you start having those anxious thoughts, walk through them and rationalize them. Get like, okay, well, what are you afraid of? Well, this might happen. Okay, say that happens, then what? And just keep walking through, and it's like, is this something at the end of all of that fear and anxiety? Will you still be alive? Will you still be okay? Will you be physically okay? And if so, maybe try to push yourself into that realm,
I think a big thing is to break the cycle. So, and catch it early, especially with kids. Like, I think doctors are a big one, or dentists are a big fear, anxiety fear that kids can have. And I think the key is, don't give them like a whole bunch of notice, at least in my experiences, to build the anxiety and everything up, and make it as basic as possible. It's like, not a big deal, not over the top or anything. Just, okay, we got to go to the doctor. Everybody get in the car. Okay, we're going to stop and do this, and just make it very calm, and kind of work it through and work it through and work it through, and then see how far you guys can go.
Yeah. But
you're right. You have to listen, and you have to pay attention to what the person is saying, regardless of their age. And you've got to make sure that you're paying very close attention, and never, ever, 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 ever say, oh, it's not that bad, or discount what they're feeling, because nothing will shut a person down quicker than discounting one of their feelings.
Yeah. I think adults have a little bit of an advantage with a kid, like a dentist situation, because you could schedule yourself for a cleaning or whatever and have the kid go with you and watch. True. And just be like, see, it's fine. Just sit there and go through the whole thing. I mean, I guess unless you have an enormous fear of dentists, then maybe that won't work so well. But, but
you go screaming, you're like, your turn.
Yeah. Nope. But if you don't show that it's bad, they may go, oh, it's not so bad. And then they're a little more willing to, deal with it. I know that's why a lot of dentists, tell everybody what they're using, and all that kind of stuff, is kind of to ease the anxiety,
Exactly. And another really good thing is music. Music can help you get you through just about anything. Mm-hmm. So, if your child's really into music, if your child's really into, reading, make it exciting. Make sure that, their favorite songs are in the car on the way to the dentist or the doctor, or get them a new book, for the waiting room and stuff like that. Or, find ways of helping them move the anxiety and put it in its place. Mm. Yes, there's always going to be anxiety there, but we can work with it. We can work around it, basically.
Those things work as distractions also. And
yes.
Anxiety, if you can distract yourself during anxious moments, sometimes that, that can, like you said before, you break the cycle of anxiety at that point. Like exactly. You get caught up listening to a song you really like, and then you don't pay attention to as much about that you're anxious. Again, that's probably why most dentists play music in the rooms,
Yes.
Not that they usually let you pick the music, but they, at least not the ones I've been to. They tend to play easy listening, which, yeah.
Kind of puts you on edge.
Yeah. I know it's supposed to help calm you, I think, but.
When you hear the Foo Fighters played elevator music style.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's amazing how much anxiety and anger that can create.
Right.
Right.
Like, no, there doesn't go My Hero like this.
Yeah.
No.
Right.
The thing, this conversation just reminds me of, I think it's a fascinating, comparison to talking about going to the dentist first, going to my grandparents' house, where it scared the hell out of me. And not for any reason. It's not like I was abused or anything. I mean, yeah, there was some weird stuff. I didn't like my uncle. Then again, neither did my mother, and I probably was catching more of what she, I was picking up her anxiety, without her even saying it. But it's like I didn't want to go, but I didn't have a good reason not to go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so we went, and I'm always glad we went. There was never a problem with that, but I always had that feeling of like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. And, I started to think of, there was a situation where it was like a scene in a movie where the all of a sudden their devil face shows up and goes away. Like I had one of those moments with my grandparents when I was a kid. I mean, it was flat out like that. It scared the crap out of me. I didn't want to be around them anymore.
Yeah, sure.
I saw the person that my mother had anxiety about. They showed that person to me, and I was a child.
Wow.
And, my sister and I were probably 7 or 8 years old.
Yeah.
My sister was probably about 6. Yeah, and I was probably about 7 or 8. And we were going to a performance, and my parents were in the performance, and I was there with my grandparents and my uncle. And it scared the crap out of me. It was like, who is this person that just showed up? And I'm sure that probably went for years of me having some sort of trepidation. We'd go visit because of what I experienced.
Yeah, sure.
I know I've had a conversation about it with my mom and dad as an adult. I don't know how long it took me though. I doubt if there was this, well, why don't you want to go conversation with my mom and dad, if that I would say anything when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I'd had that level of openness or honesty, but I really, this is just such a tough topic.
Yeah.
Because there's times when I'm around my nephews and we're going to go do something, and I can tell that, one of them is not into it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And luckily I have my brother-in-law is amazing. I watch him with his kids, and I just go, yeah, that's why I don't have kids, is because how you raise your boys. It's like, you do it right. I wouldn't do that. Yeah. It's their time. He gets off of work early, he goes and picks them up from school, and it's their time. It's not his time.
Yeah.
Whatever they want to do. And there's just love there. And I don't know what level of conversations they have. I'd be actually, curious about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't think most kids don't get a real say in that kind of stuff,
Mm-hmm.
because it's like with your grandparents, it probably wasn't a, hey, Henno, do you want to go to grandma and grandpa's? It's probably a, let's go. We're going to,
we're going.
Yeah.
That's what Sunday is. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So, and if you do have anxiety towards something, you can't really, like you said, you may not, whether, even if you did recognize it, you may not have that open conversation with your parents about it. I could totally see that, because I probably wouldn't have either. Yeah.
I mean, I know I didn't. It was tough because it was someone very close to me in my family, and I struggled going. I was fine hanging out with them during the day, but at night I would get sick. My stomach would turn inside out, and now I realize it was an anxiety attack. It was a panic attack. And I don't know why. I've always been very close with my mom, and I think that's part of it. That being away from her at night just really bothered me.
Yeah.
And I never really had a good reason why. But, you know, looking back on things, what I would have done to young me, what I would have said to young me is I would have, you know, surrounded myself with comfort items. Like bring my favorite book with me.
Yeah.
Bring my, you know, as I got older, I naturally started doing that. And I didn't realize what I was doing, but I would just naturally start doing that. I'd always carry my favorite books with me. I'll always carry, you know, now I have my phone so I can play my games or I can do things like that to distract myself. But yeah, it's interesting because I guess for parents, what I would tell parents to do would be to, if you sense that anxiety with your kid and you do try talking with them to a certain extent to what, you know, depending upon their age or whatever, and you can't get very far there, definitely resort to that, you know, making sure that they have some favorite things with them, some comfort items to help distract them and help to bring those comfort feelings in awkward or difficult situations.
Yeah.
You know, there's one thing I've noticed with kids a lot is, and this is mostly through my interaction with my nephews, are the ones that I probably, you know, spend more time with than anybody else, you know, when I can, is there are so many times where there may be fear, there may be anxiety when it comes to some activity or whatever it is. And that might only be one time. And the next time they may even bring it up like, hey, can we go do that?
Yeah.
I'm amazed at how, and the first time I listened, well, you know, I typically go skiing with them every year, you know, and that can be kind of freaky. Sure. And, you know, we're in a strange place and whatever it is. And I'm amazed at how, there'll be some fear. Yeah, I don't want to do that. It's like, okay, that's okay. We don't have to do it. You know, no problem, buddy. You know, it's like, we don't need to go you know, let's go do something else. What would you rather do right now? And we'll go do something else fun. And then the next year, I don't even bring it up. They bring it up. Like, hey, do you think we can, you know, go and do that run or whatever it is? And I love that about kids. And that's, for me, it's like, that's how I imagine good parenting is that you allow them to get past their fears on their own. You don't force them into it because of what I want to do. Oh, you're going to do this because I do it, or what, you know, whatever that is. I just think that is, to me, that's good parenting, is paying attention, is actually knowing, getting to know, you know, your kids.
Yeah.
And let them know that it's okay. Well, like you said, it's like the anxiety isn't going to go away, but it's how do you deal with it?
Yeah.
That's what's important. Those are the tools. Well, and that's what we talked a lot about last week, is tools.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is the opportunity to help your child develop the tools that will go with them the rest of their life, and hopefully not turn them into alcoholics.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, because there are sometimes you've got to push. Like, it's the first day of a new school year. Clearly, you can't let them just keep staying home. At some point, they have to go to school. You know, so there are times where it's like, hey, look, you know, you're going to be okay. It's scary for everybody. You know, but it's, you know, especially when you're in the younger grades, you know, you're going to be in classes with all your friends again. You know, when you get into high school and stuff, it's a little different because, you know, you start getting into classes to where most of the class is not people you know a lot of times. And, you know, well, depending on the size of your schools and stuff. For me, that's how it was, you know, because, you know, you all go different ways too. You know, like I went toward art classes and most of my friends didn't. They went more toward other stuff, you know. So I started realizing most of my classes, I was lucky if I had a friend in them, you know, and that becomes very scary, you know.
And that's the thing that like I went to a different school when I was in the second grade, And yeah, that was a little weird. You walk into a room and there's these names on the wall. I don't recognize any of them. I'm looking around. It's all strange. I remember having a little, I'll call it trepidation. It wasn't a lot of fear. I don't know why. For some reason, it was okay. But I can't help but think about all those people that, military kids or whatever it is,
no
where they traveled and traveled, and then you meet them later on in life, and they've got all sorts of issues, attachment issues, and kind of things, and I understand that it's making a living, but I also go, I have friends that have literally changed their lives so that their children can grow up in the best environment possible, where they have quit jobs, they've changed jobs, they've sold houses, they've consolidated, they moved closer to family, they've done all their things for their kids, not for themselves. And I just sit there and I go, bravo, once again, this is why I'm not having children. You rock, buddy, you do it. That's it. I want you raising the future of this country.
Yeah.
Not the guy that says, we're going to, and I know you don't have much choice in the military, but boy, there's a point where it's like, my kid has been to 5 different schools in the last 5 years. Gee, I wonder how healthy that is for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a little soapbox Henno for you.
And it's tough because you have to find that balance between what's, making a living, and providing for your family.
Yeah.
So, you know what? If military career provides for your family and you're doing the best you can do with what you got, more power to you. But it is tough, and it's tough with all the moving. It's tough with all the anxiety, and it's definitely learning the tools, and helping your kids understand the tools that are going to make those things easier as you go.
Good point.
In that communication. Yeah. It's all about that, keeping communication and letting them and helping them understand self-awareness as early as they can. Because, there's some age limits and stuff associated with that. But the next one on here is express positive but realistic expectations. I think this is an interesting one because it kind of harkens back to kind of what, Brian, you were talking about and what your therapist was telling you, that kind of work your fears through to the end and then figure it out.
Yeah.
They write in the article, you can't promise a child that his or her fears are unrealistic, that she won't fail a test, that he'll have fun ice skating, or that another child won't laugh at them during the show and tell. But you can express confidence that they're going to be okay, that they will be able to manage it, and that as they face their fears, the anxiety level will drop over time. This gives them confidence that your expectations are realistic and that you're not going to ask them to do something they can't handle. That's pretty good.
See, I like that. That ties in with what we were just talking about. Is there's more to. There's more to. I mean, it's yes, being your kid's biggest fan, being there in their corner, so to speak, is great. But like, let's just say you're moving again. Okay. You got to break the news. It's going to be okay. You're the biggest fan. You're the biggest cheerleader, but then you get to your new place of living and dad's off on his own doing his own thing. It's like, no, stay that kid's cheerleader. Check back in, help them with the transition as much. And that I love that once again is those communication tools that are just huge, that you can get through this. Because see, that was the thing for me, I think, as an adult, is there were a lot of things that I honestly didn't think I could get through on my own. Like I can't get, for some reason I chose to, I preferred to numb it out.
Yeah.
Whatever it was that I was going to do to block it out, I didn't think I could emotionally handle it. I don't know where I got that idea, but I got it somewhere. And I had to be taught again. Yes, you can handle this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can handle life, and we can handle these little things.
And it's interesting because when they were talking about in here, don't, what is it? You can't don't make false promises, you know? Oh, you'll have a great time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. And I think that's really strong because that's the first thing that we all want to do. It's like the first words that we all want to say coming out of our mouth. Oh, you're going to be fine. You're going to have a great time. Don't worry about it. It's good. Don't worry. Everything's fine.
It might not work out that
Yeah,
fine.
Right? Exactly.
Right. But I think that's the more important part of it is that honesty and keeping that honesty with your children. It's like, you know what? I don't know if it's going to be a great time or if it's not going to be a great time, but I do know that we're going to make it the best time we can. I do know that, so-and-so is going to be there. They're one of your best friends. So the odds are in your favor that this is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Or you two will at least have a good time, even if the rest of the party is not, or whatever it is. Stuff like that, I think goes a long way when you're dealing with someone with anxieties because they're already in a negative space. And if you try to throw too much positive at their negative space, it almost like bounces off of it.
Yeah, well, you're also not receptive when you're in that state. You're not, you're not really looking to have your mind changed,
So by going, so it's like almost like, subverting it, going in the back door and saying, and planting some new, not so bad ideas.
Yeah, because it was like, it reminds me of when in sixth grade, the class every year, the sixth grade class they went to, a camp for a week. And after they came back from the camp, there was always this like assembly, and the sixth graders learned to square dance at the camp and had to stand in front of the school and square dance. And before that, like partway through my sixth grade year, as it got closer and closer
to that time,
my anxiety was going through the roof. Like I didn't want to go. First of all, I didn't want to go because I don't like camping. I don't like outdoor stuff. I never have. It's not who I am, So I didn't even want to go. But it was kind of everybody else is going concept. You get pressure from the school, from the teachers and the principal. You get pressure from other kids. Even though I didn't really care because, my best friend, Tony, was not in my class. He was a year younger than me. So, he wasn't going to be there. And so whereas a lot of kids, your best friend a lot of times is in your grade, Mm-hmm. So for me, my safety zone wasn't going to be there, like that kind of a thing. So I remember just being so anxious about it. And then as luck would have it, I got chicken pox and didn't have to go. So when it came time
Be careful what you pray for.
Yeah, right? Well, no, what's funny is that, my, after I was no longer contagious, a couple days after that, like during that time, my brother bought me Ninja Turtle figures, and at the time, Ninja Turtle figures were really hard to find in the stores. They were really hard to find, and he found like the four turtles for me, and brought them over and got me like I think my mom and dad they got them for me, but he found them. They bought them, but they got me videos to watch. I got to sit and play video games basically all day. And then once that was over, my mom took me to a place called Major Magics here, which basically for everyone else, it's basically a Chuck E. Cheese concept. And, so I got to go hang out and do that. So it was a great week. Aside from the chicken pox part, the rest of it was awesome. And I didn't have school the whole week, so it was, but yeah, when all the other kids had to get up in front of the school and do the dancing, I didn't have to because I didn't go.
Nice.
Yeah.
Win-win.
Yeah. I'll gladly take chicken pox over standing in front of the school doing anything.
See, that's like like that kind of a thing can produce a huge level of anxiety for certain people.
Yeah.
Gigantic.
And you didn't have a choice. Like, you had to get up and do it, which is garbage. You shouldn't have to do it. But they know if they make it optional, nobody will do it, But
which begs the question, why do it then?
yes.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm wondering is like,
why do we force our children to do these things?
Mm-hmm.
Well, why do we challenge ourselves?
Yeah.
I mean, like what it's we have you gotta, I think back and I go, there's a lot of things that I had to do.
Yeah.
I had to do them.
Yep.
I didn't like doing them at first, but I needed to do them for a reason, even if it was to learn that I never want to do that again.
Nope, you're right. You're right.
It's tough.
Yep.
Like that's why I just sit there. This whole topic is like, man, this is why I don't want to have children. Am I pushing them too hard? Am I not pushing them enough? Are they, am I coddling them too much? Am I not coddling them enough? Am I challenging them? Am I not challenging?
But it's amazing though, like you can look at adults the same way. Like there's adults in everybody's lives that they deal with anxieties and how much other people push them. And I keep going back to it, but again, we were in Chicago. Remember that first place we went into, Heno? That bar we went into? And I was like, nope. Yep. And everybody was like, okay, let's go. Nobody questioned me. Nobody was like, come on, give it. Everybody was like, nope, let's go. And we did. We found another place. So it happens even with adults. And, you could make an argument that maybe if I had stayed there a little longer, I would have gotten comfortable and blah, blah. But I didn't, at that moment, it was nope for me, know. And you guys, none of you pushed it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not at all. I'd rather have that type of attitude in life and have that also the attitude with kids or whoever it is. That seems right to me.
Yeah.
I don't want to, I guess what it is you can overanalyze the crap out of this.
Yeah, exactly. You really can.
Really, like, I think it definitely happens. I know even within my relationship, there's been times where we were going to go do something and it was like, I'm not feeling this. No problem. We don't need to do this. No big deal. But the only time that works is when you're not. I think this is the main thing is like when I'm not being self-centered, I have the capacity to listen and hear and communicate.
Yeah.
And when I'm self-centered, I don't. And I need to, and I try to, I try to do that when I'm around my nephews, is to have that attitude where it's like, no, this is not about me. This is about them.
Yeah.
And yes, they're looking to me for guidance. And yes, I'm establishing the ground rules. Don't have a problem with that. I do that with my dogs. They're happier that way.
Everybody's
they
happy
just are.
Rules. Yeah.
Yeah. No, they like the rules. I let them push it. Yeah. And I mean, it's just, I'm like that. There's a part of me that's like, I like to know what the boundaries are. I'll stay within them. I'm good that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm that way too. And I've always felt more comfortable if you give me some guidelines to go off of.
Mm-hmm.
I love my freedom, but
Yep. And understanding ramifications. It's like, all right, so what? You don't want me to do this. What if I do it? And then you give me the ramifications for that action, and I can stop and go, okay, now I can make an informed decision.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and if you decide to push me, and I'm not going to feel bad about it. I mean, I'm just not.
Yep.
I'm just not.
Yep.
If I laid out the rules and I laid out the consequences, and you decide to push it anyway, I don't care if you're crying.
Yeah.
No,
I don't. I was honest and I communicated.
Yeah. Right.
There you go.
Yep.
You're all on the same page. You knew it was going to happen. So the next one on here is respect the feelings, but don't empower them. The message you want to send is, I know you're scared and that's okay. And I'm here and I'm going to help you get through this.
See, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to help you get through this. That's huge.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So you don't belittle their fears. You don't say, oh, you're making too big of a deal. It's not that big a deal. Or, don't do any of that. Just, I hear what you're saying. I understand this is difficult for you. I'm going to be here with you. We're going to get through this together. Perfect.
Yeah.
That's all you need to say. Make it your mantra. Say it all the time.
Yeah. don't use the words "suck it up" or stuff like along those lines, because I could go on and on for days on that. Yeah.
Denying people their feelings has become one of the things I've become hypersensitive to.
Yeah.
I see it right away now. It's like when my eyes were open to that, I can't unsee it now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's narcissistic behavior. It is, and the fact that people do it with their kids, it just breaks my heart.
Yep.
Absolutely breaks my heart. It's bad enough that we do it to each other as adults.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let alone our children. No, you don't feel that way.
Yeah.
Oh, you don't really mean that.
Yeah. Well, and that's a lot of the people who do this, and I'm not saying just with kids, but with adults also, they don't want to have a conversation or a fight. They just want, like Henno said, it's a narcissistic thing because you just want your way. It's really what it comes down to.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And what does that do that to the other person? You just, they sit there and they go, but I do feel this way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're telling me I can't.
Yep. You've just minimized them as a person. Yeah.
Yeah. And now how likely are they, there goes one tool out the window, communication. Gone.
Which is the biggest tool.
Trust.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing with it. You're already prone to anxiety. Now I'm gonna confuse you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Never a good idea. So keep it simple, keep it to the point, and do not. Feelings are feelings are feelings. You're going to have feelings. You may not understand why you're having that feeling, but it's still there.
Yeah.
What you can do is you can control your actions. And that's the key when you're talking with kids and stuff, and fears, anxieties, and all that jazz, is helping them understand that it's okay. You're going to have these feelings. These feelings are natural. It's just fine. But let's work through them.
Yeah.
I like that. I'm going to be here to help you.
Yeah.
I love that. That doesn't mean that you're going to be there to hold their hand the whole way.
Right.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I'm going to be here for you.
Yeah.
You're going to go, like you said, Brian, you got to go to school.
Mm-hmm.
But guess what? I'm going to be here to pick you up after school.
Right. And you can tell me about how awful it was. And I'm going to, we'll talk about it or whatever. It's so important that people do that because, when I used to get home from school, my parents always would ask me, how things went. How was the day? And a lot of times, and if I, and I always knew I could tell them, like if it was bad, I could say it was bad. I had a bad situation with some teachers in 6th grade, and when it escalated, I came home and I threw my backpack and told my mom I didn't want to go back to school, and she said, "Why?" And I told her, I said, "These teachers are sexist and whatnot," and she immediately was like, "Well, I need to know everything," and she went and fought for me, and it was that kind of thing that was established at a very young age for me, that I always knew my parents had my back, that if things weren't bad, I needed to tell them because that's the only way they could try to make things right for me, or to help me make things right. It wasn't always about them doing for me, like obviously if you have bullying, they're not going to go in and, deal with the kid. You have to learn some skills for that too. So you can cope with it as well. But, I knew from a young age that I could tell them and they had my back. And that was so important, because I know a lot of kids that didn't have that.
It's huge. That's like a make or break type thing in life.
Yeah.
Is knowing that you have people, may not be your parents, maybe other people, but people in your life that that you can always trust to have your back. It's huge.
Yeah.
Now, the next two kind of go hand in hand. Is one, don't ask leading questions, and don't reinforce the child's fears. So, and I can see that because it's, are you anxious about the big test? Are you worried about the science?
Oh, I see what you're saying by leading questions. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Right.
Don't put the thoughts in their head, and then don't reinforce the child's fear. maybe this is something that you should be afraid of. No.
Yeah. Yeah.
Man, I'd be scared too if I were you.
Yeah. Yeah.
How are you going to do this?
Yeah.
Wow,
you're braver than I am. Yeah. I think we all do that though. I think this is one that people will never escape. I think we're all prone to do it, and we're not meaning to do that when we do it, but it's so common. Like if someone tells you that they do something for their job, that like they're a firefighter.
Yeah.
And you're like, man, I'd be terrified to run into a building. Like we all do it. We're not trying to instill any anxiety or fear in them. We're actually trying to pay them a compliment.
Yeah, we're trying. Yeah,
exactly. Because we're trying to say, even saying you're braver than I am, it's still,
right.
You're trying to pay a compliment, but it could be taken the other way. But I think with that, people feel the intent and, don't think anything of it.
I think the other one is like, the open-ended, leading questions.
Yeah.
Those are tough. Because, like, basically, are you anxious about the big test?
Yeah, sure.
Instead of saying, are you anxious about the big test, you can say something more along the lines of, how do you think the test is going to go today?
Even that gives them room for the anxiety, though.
Well, but at least, because it's still, what you want to understand is you want to know where their heads are at.
Yeah, I know.
But you don't want to put the negative thoughts in there.
Yeah.
So, or are you ready for the test? Maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know what the proper question is at that point. Because they all feel like it all feels like you're asking them for a no or a yeah. It's all a give me a yes or a no, and then I guess it's up to them to tell you. I mean, it is a factual thing. If a kid's going to an SAT test, you do want to make sure they're prepared, but how do you do that without trying, not undermining what they've done,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Interesting. Well, and that's the end of the article. So what do you guys think? Any last words about dealing with children and with anxiety?
It's funny because, like talking with this and stuff, I think especially if the kids are a little older and whatnot, it's so similar to just talking to adults because there's so many adults that have made it into adulthood without those tools to cope with a lot of this stuff. You're not taught in school how to deal with anxiety and fear. Like there's no class that teaches you coping tools. You don't learn. I mean, you do learn some stuff, but you know what I'm saying? Like you don't learn about like, I can't think now. Different stuff that like I've learned in therapy, you don't learn about, distorted thinking or whatever else, you don't hear that stuff in most classes until you get into like, probably into like, intro to psych or something like that, that type of level. And, I don't know, maybe it's something that should be there more. I mean, like I know all through school there was a guidance counselor, but there's never really any weight put on going to the guidance counselor. The only mandatory guidance counselor visits I had that I remember were like when, because they helped you do your, what do you call it? Your scheduling for the following year in high school, like when it came time to schedule for the next year, you would go to a guidance counselor, or they had the things I think in the gym where it was just like a bunch of people and they would help you through it or whatever. But there wasn't a lot of, like, there wasn't just a periodic check-in with the guidance counselor or something like that. And I don't know, maybe there should be,
Yeah, there's a good point.
But I think Heno really nailed it earlier when he made a comment about how it's such a complicated topic and so easy to overanalyze. Because I think if you really start trying to make sure you're 100% right, you're going to end up second guessing yourself. And you do kind of have to, I think, just go with your instinct a lot of the time. But there are some of these pitfalls that, you try to be careful of. Again, not just with kids, but with adults too,
Sure.
Well, then how do you know whether your child has a reasonable level of anxiety, an unreasonable level of anxiety. Like if I guess if you have more than one child, you have somewhat of a comparison.
Mhm.
But if you don't have that, how do you find that out?
Yeah.
How do you know that, okay, this is normal, this is not normal, and do I need to take some extra steps?
Yep.
Doctors. That's when you bring in, just like with adults or with yourself, that if you're not sure, you go to the doctor, and the doctor can help assess you and put you on the right path.
Yeah. Or I guess maybe use the same analysis as you would for an adult. Like the first question is, does it affect you negatively? Like, does it affect their life? Like, are they, can they not get their homework done and, whatever? Are they showing some of the signs that if you saw it in an adult, you would be concerned? I don't know. Yeah. Or maybe just as parents and people in general, again, I'm not trying to be negative at anybody, but like people in general don't really know what signs to look for people for mental illness. They know the big ones, but they don't know the subtle ones, which there's way more of those and way more signs. And if you know those, much easier to pick up on somebody's language that way than to wait until something bigger happens, and maybe that's the answer, is that maybe people just need to try to be better versed in these things. It's tough. I mean, it's, parents got enough on their plate, it's so.
But I mean, it definitely could be, a really great way for sure to have it in schools and stuff and have parents teach these tools.
Well, really, why isn't it part of health class? I didn't learn a thing about depression in health class.
I don't know.
Yeah,
that's a good question.
Maybe if I had, maybe I would have gone and talked to somebody. Maybe not, but it's at some point, some of this stuff I think should, kind of permeate some curriculum somewhere, or that, people need to learn about this, and I don't know, because it affects so many people, I don't know.
Exactly. So. Well, with that, I think it's about time for us to do our wrap up. What do you think?
Yeah.
Sounds good.
We good? Mm-hmm. All right. Well, if you want to continue the conversation with me, folks, you can reach me on Twitter at Jen's Crazy Life. That's Jen with a G. You can also write us an email at thecrazylifepodcast@outlook.com or our website at thecrazylifepodcast.weebly.com. Heno, how can they get in touch with you?
You can find me on Twitter at Ida Heno, and you can find me on Facebook, Heno Heiter. And I brought this up a couple weeks ago, or maybe 3 weeks ago now. I did a podcast on with my friend Matthew. His podcast called Passers By, Passers plural by dash by, and you can find that on iTunes and Stitcher. And he's got his own website and stuff. And I had an opportunity to tell a story, and I chose to kind of tell how I found spirituality in recovery. And I don't go into too much detail on here, but if you want to check that out, you can hear my story, and maybe something in there relates to you.
Cool. Awesome. Mm-hmm. And Brian, how can they reach you?
You can also reach the show at on Twitter at the Crazy Life Pod, where I update when new episodes go up, even though you should already be subscribed anyway. You can find me on Twitter at Stunami. You can find the other podcast I'm on, which is Salty Language, which is a not safe for work podcast. You can find that on Twitter at salty_language or at saltylanguage.com. Our Facebook group for this show is facebook.com/groups/crazylifepodcast. And on that page, there's a page that says notes or something to that level. That's got a bunch of, it's got like resources and phone numbers and different stuff on there. If you're looking for help with therapy, or if you just need to talk to somebody, or if you're feeling suicidal, all those kind of things, there's some good info on there. We're also part of the Tangent Bound Network, which can be found at tangentboundnetwork.com. And let's see, what else do I have here? However did you listen to us, whether it's iTunes or Stitcher or whatever app you're using, if they have a share or a like option, please use that. And again, subscribe, if you haven't already, please. And lastly, I'll also ask that if you use iTunes, please leave us a review, because it helps boost us in their search results. So people have an easier time finding us. And also I wanted to mention, because I do this every once in a while because I forget, but to make sure if you happen to skip the intro song or whatever, go back and listen to the intro song, because Henno did a great job on our intro song. So,
yes, he did.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then the next step is we're not, therapists, doctors, trained professionals of any kind, just three people sharing our opinions and journeys and, memories and whatnot. So, please don't mistake this show for therapy. If you need help, please seek out professional help. Don't self-diagnose. And just, go find somebody to help teach you the tools you need to fight on. And if you are feeling suicidal or planning, find yourself planning a suicide or how you would do it, definitely reach out to someone, whether it's a friend or a doctor, or, call 911, tell them you have a mental health emergency. A lot of insurance cards have a mental health number on the back you can call, whatever it is. Or, again, go to our Facebook group or contact one of us and we can, hook you up with the info to maybe find someone to talk to. But try not to be alone, and definitely, please do not act on it. There's help out there if you want it.
Absolutely. And with that, everyone, be safe. Have a great week and keep breathing.